It's 10 p.m. in the East on this Super Tuesday, and this is where the Republican Party stands right now.
There is a look at the delegates right now. Nikki Haley has 43. Donald Trump, 353. It takes 1215 to clinch the deal and get the Republican nomination. We'll see where the former president lands tonight and whether or not he will be able to close this on March 12th or March 19th, most likely. And we're still keeping an eye on Vermont at this hour, and no doubt they're watching Vermont closely in Nikki Haley's camp as well this evening. It could be a potential win. It would be the second state, one district in one state if she were to win there. As you can see, it's tight and too close to call, about 60% of the vote in there.
But again, the former president's won 11 states. Nikki Haley has won the District of Columbia, and obviously it's 59% in Vermont, and she trails there, ticking one point, a little bit, 0.4%.
Yep. So we have Fox team coverage with Peter Doocy live at the White House, Aisha Hasni at the Trump campaign headquarters, where we're waiting any moment now. We should hear from the former president, and Bill Melugin is following Team Haley in South Carolina. So, Bill, let's start with you.
Yeah, Martha, good evening to you. It has been quiet from the Haley campaign for the better part of 3 hours now. The last time we heard from them, they told us they were having a private watch party with campaign staff and that everybody was in a good mood. But you take a look at some of these early returns from states she spent a lot of time in recent days, probably not going the way they had hoped so far. One of the states she was expected to have a better shot in, as you guys just mentioned, is Vermont. Right now, that is neck and neck. It is too close to call. Vermont, Nikki Haley was there on Sunday. She had a campaign event in Burlington on Sunday, one of many states she hit as she was crisscrossing the country in recent days. We reached out to her campaign to see if they have any comment or reaction to that neck or neck race in Vermont. We have not heard back from them yet. But look, Nikki Haley is still chasing her first state win in this primary. You guys mentioned she won the District of Columbia. She has not won a state yet. Will she be able to bring in Vermont? We will see, but she's looking for any kind of momentum she could get. We do not expect to hear from Nikki Haley tonight, and she does not have any public events on her schedule today or tomorrow. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Bill, thank you very much.
Aisha Hasni is live at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. The former president, again, expected to speak in about 13 minutes. That's what the campaign's saying. This is quite something. This comeback politically, Aisha, in the big picture, if you think about where we were a couple of years ago, is pretty remarkable.
It's absolutely remarkable, guys, but anyone that you talk to here would tell you they knew it all along. These are your ride or dies, your hardcore Trump supporters that have come out. Some folks, liked Governor Ron DeSantis. I was talking with two young ladies here, staffers with the state legislature, and they were telling me they love their governor, but they never imagined him as the next president, Republican president. They really always thought it was a no-brainer. It's going to be Trump. I want to give you some color here. We are waiting for the former president's remarks. Right now, I'm told he's watching the results come in, surrounded by his family. We don't know if there are any notable former presidential candidates with him here tonight, or if he's going to bring anyone with him up on the stage. I'm told by the campaign that it's really a game time decision for the former president, that he'll just decide what he feels like before he comes on stage, and then we'll see where he goes from there. But what will be interesting tonight, and the former president really has sort of not given a straight answer as to this, is whether or not he's going to get up on the stage and ask Nikki Haley, call on her to step down tonight, especially if this is a clean sweep, which is really the way it's going right now. But I can tell you, people are so energized. It's electric. It really does feel like a general election watch party here tonight in Mar-a-Lago. Back to you.
Aisha, thank you. We'll head back when the former president hits the stage.
All right. So meanwhile, President Biden is watching all of this unfold at the White House as he continues to rack up delegates on this Super Tuesday. He's an incumbent, obviously, so it's a little bit of a different picture for him. Peter Doocy is there tonight. Peter, want to hear what you are hearing there, but it is interesting that Massachusetts and North Carolina both have around 10% of no preference voters in the Democrat races in both of those states. But what are you hearing there at the White House?
Martha, we have some breaking news here, something I didn't expect to say on Super Tuesday, standing just a few dozen yards away from where President Biden sits tonight. we have reaction from the Biden campaign about President Biden's defeat in American Samoa by Jason Palmer. His website is down right now, probably crashed, a lot of new interest in him. So we don't know a ton about this entrepreneur's platform, but a source in Wilmington tells me in American Samoa, there are less than 500 votes expected, uncommitted there, won in 2016 with 45% over Bernie and Clinton, so some unique politics there. That is not a first. President Biden did not win American Samoa in 2020. Michael Bloomberg did. We don't think that Jason Palmer spent $500 million on ads, but the rest of the night seems like it's going pretty well for President Biden. Everybody that we've talked to at the campaign headquarters in Delaware is focusing on, I asked them basically, what are you guys seeing? They sent over a list, not about Democratic rivals, but about what they see as Trump's weakness with moderates and with Haley supporters. So in Delaware, they are in general election mode. We don't expect to see President Biden on camera this evening, but we should hear from him in some way and soon. Martha.
All right, Peter, thank you very much.
We're back with our panel now in studio. Mark Thiessen, if you're the president or his campaign, and you see these recent polls, a string of them, including New York Times Siena poll, that has you underwater and all the major issues that you see voters caring about, what are you thinking at this moment, 8 months to the day from the general election?
Well, first of all, you and I are the only people in this panel who've been to American Samoa together.
That's true. At the Pentagon,
so we'll have some searing insights into the politics of American Samoa in a moment. But if you're Joe Biden, I mean, he's the most unpopular president in the history of presidential polling. His disapproval right now is double what Donald Trump was at the same time in 2020. So he's incredibly vulnerable. This is the moment for Donald Trump to turn around and pivot to the general election and reach out to those disaffected Democrats and trying to bring them into his coalition. You know, Juan was talking about Michigan and how, well, those Arab American voters are never going to come around to Donald Trump. His problem in Michigan isn't just Arab Americans, it's auto workers who've been hurt by his EV policies. Biden's problem, his EV policies, and he actually just pulled back on his EV mandates because he knows that. Those are people who could vote for Donald Trump. So Trump needs to reach out to disaffected Democrats, and he needs to bring the Haley voters into his coalition. He needs to make a concerted effort. His problem right now is not never Trump voters who never voted for him, didn't vote for him in 2016, didn't vote for him in 2020, never will. His problem is not Trump again voters. Voters who are open to his policies, who might have voted for him before or considered voting for him, who liked his presidency, didn't like how he behaved, and are very unhappy with Joe Biden. Though a lot of those people voted for Nikki Haley, and they're saying they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. He's got to bring those voters on, and if he doesn't, he's not going to win. He lost, as Kevin McCarthy pointed out, he lost the election by 42,918 votes in 3 states. If even a handful of those Haley voters decide they're just staying home, they're not even voting for Joe Biden or even a third-party candidate, that could cost him the election. So he needs to pivot now and do what successful two-term presidents do, which is not just feed their base, expand their base.
Katie, what do you say about that?
Well, I think it's up to Haley voters as well to come back into the fold. You've had Donald Trump a few times trying to discuss bringing them back, and Nikki Haley continues this effort to try and gain delegates and maybe get some leverage for some kind of position. But he's talked about this a little bit. He's gone back as she has also hurled insults towards him. But when it comes to what we're watching, we are watching a general election. We are seeing tonight this big party at Mar-a-Lago. They're raring to go. The Trump campaign this time around is much more organized than it was last time around. And Americans have a fresh memory in a way that's very unique in this situation because they can remember what their lives were like under Donald Trump. They don't have to remember 30 years ago. They don't have to look at a set of Republican policies. They remember. They can directly compare it to what they're getting now. And when it comes to Joe Biden, he is underwater on every single issue with independents, with his own party. He is losing his coalition. He is in a deep hole, and he doesn't have a ladder yet to try and climb out of it. And I think the question on the uncommitted voters, especially in Michigan, those voters are being driven by Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. She is leading that. So who is Joe Biden going to have to really cater to bring Michigan into the fold, to bring other states into the fold of people who are upset about his policies, especially when it comes to foreign policy? And finally, I'll say the issues obviously matter here with Joe Biden giving the State of the Union later this week. For Republicans, immigration is number one. For Democrats, it's abortion. The number 2 issue is the economy. And Americans believe that the costs for them will go up under Biden and down under Trump. So we'll see if they can hone in on that message.
Charles, about costs, we are going to hear in the State of the Union a tick-tock of different numbers, and you deal with them on your show all the time. The Biden folks talking about what the good numbers are, but we've been talking about how people feel about things.
Right.
When you talk about the economy in this environment politically, how do you see it?
You know, for me, the election is about big government, big spending, what they call modern monetary theory, that the government, no one should suffer. This is the ideology. No one should suffer if the government prints money. Now, the folks who believe in this modern monetary theory do acknowledge that it creates inflation. In fact, there's a scheme they use, a sink. They pour the water, is pouring into the sink, and the water that pours over the sink is inflation. They say if you reelect President Biden, we'll do it right this time, because we did the greatest experiment in history of free money. That last $1.9 trillion, you lay on that, don't pay your rent, don't pay your school bills. We had trillions and trillions of dollars cascading into this economy, and it's like going out to the bar. At 10 o'clock at night, it felt great. Midnight, it felt fantastic. This is like 2 days later, and we're still like, what the hell do we drink, right? So they're saying, if you reelect me, we'll take a little bit of this water out via taxes. We'll tax all the rich, and therefore you can have your cake and eat it too. On the other side, of course, is good old-fashioned pull yourself up by the bootstraps. That's why we have two things in economics. Nominal numbers, what they are on the surface. Adjusted numbers, what we call real numbers. And that's what the American public feels. They feel the real numbers. On the surface, it looks fantastic. GDP, fantastic. This looks fantastic. But if you go into the store, if you went to a store with $10 and walked out with 2 bags, and then a year later you went with $10 and walked out 1 bag, or $15 and walked out 1 bag, you're saying, I didn't make it much further. So I can brag and say, listen, I put $15 in your pocket. You look at me, yeah, but I only came out with 1 bag. So that's where the American public is, and that's why it's so intriguing, because President Biden and the media have tried desperately to convince Americans that they're doing better than they are, to the point of insulting them. Like, how dumb can you be? You're doing fantastic, and people are like, I am? They're not. They're really not.
I want to ask Juan this question, because you look at these stunning numbers of Black voters and Hispanic voters. 23 points move with Hispanic voters towards Trump. President Biden has about 60%, 2/3 of the Black vote. Why is that?
Why is President Trump, former President Trump, increasing, is what you're asking me?
Dramatically.
Well, I don't think it's that dramatic, but
23-point move?
Well, I think a lot of this has to do, again, with, my perception is we're watching the Trump show. Everything is about Trump. And I think for people who are, as Charles was talking about, discontented and saying, well, you know what, we put a lot of energy into Joe Biden and a lot of hope, and we thought things would change radically. And instead, things have not changed radically. I haven't seen a big increase in my wages or whatever.
But those voters have been historically very dedicated to the Democrat Party.
There's no question.
And when you see, if you're north of 91, Hillary Clinton got 91% of the Black vote. Biden's at like 63, according to this latest number. So that's more than just there's a big show
Republican has
going
never
on.
gotten more than 12.
Let me just tell you one thing I think we're looking at it the wrong way. You got to look at it where particularly young black men are coming from.
Right.
This is not the same black voter that voted for Hillary Clinton, which are mostly older black women, who, by the way, are still predominantly in the Democratic camp. If you listen, for instance, like my son, I've listened to rap music for the last 20 years. You can hear the transformation of, hey, I've got on a gold watch, to I rep a liquor company, to I own a liquor company. They are talking about prosperity. The hottest conversation in Black America right now is generational wealth. Generational wealth. They're saying, you know what? You can't get my vote if you promise me higher minimum wage. No, thank you. You can't get my vote if you promise me nicer public housing. No, thank you. You cannot get my vote anymore. I want an economic backdrop where if I pull myself up by the bootstraps, maybe one day I'll have a private jet and I'll have generational wealth. That's
I think there are people like that, Charles. I just don't think that's what we're talking about. I don't think that represents the black vote in America. When we talk about increases for Trump, you may be talking about some people like that who love his gangster style and his.
I'm talking about prosperity.
Flash.
Prosperity.
Because if you're talking, hang on, Charles.
Hold on
a second.
You can't promise them higher, more welfare and get their vote.
Charles, nobody's promising that. Instead, if you're watching the State of the Union later this week, you'll hear that we didn't have a recession, and there was a lot of talk among the experts that you consult that this was going to be a recession.
We did have a recession.
We did not have a recession.
I want to, before we get the walkout of former President Trump, just take a little spin. Bill Hemmer, you're looking at a couple of things as we look live at Mar-a-Lago. This is the Democratic primary.
Yeah, a couple observations here. You guys are talking about the low poll numbers for Joe Biden. This is what we're seeing in North Carolina. Okay, the race has been called. You got about 81% reporting. Uncommitted is in double digits at 12%. All right. So that's North Carolina. That's a swing state, all right? That's going to be in play come November. This is Massachusetts, Northeast, liberal state, right? You got about 20% of the vote counted. You're just shy of 10% for uncommitted in Massachusetts as well. And then pop over here to Minnesota. Some people think they could be a battleground state, and we'll see. But you're at 22% reporting. You're just shy of 15% for uncommitted. So this goes into the conversation that you guys were having a short time ago. And if I can, let me go back to the state of Vermont here. Just want to make a point here, okay? Nikki Haley has taken a lead over Donald Trump in Vermont. So when he made the prediction earlier today at 8 a.m. Eastern time on our air that he would go 15 for 15 or had a chance to do that, right now Vermont is standing in his way.
All right.
Former President Trump at Mar-a-Lago, choosing the blue striped tie tonight in the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago. Several hundred people there. And if I had to bet, proud to be an American?
Always. Always. Well, I'm always proud to be an American, and I know everybody on this panel is as well. But I think, yeah, that's always the walkout song.
Right before the president speaks, why isn't Joe Biden speaking tonight? Joe Biden's having a big win across America tonight, yet he can't get up and give
let's
a
ask Peter if the lights are on. I don't know if the lights are on over there.
This is highly unusual. It's a primary night.
Yeah, why not?
So what? You give two big speeches if he can do it.
I will say for the former president, you don't get many big moments like this.
Yeah.
He had the Supreme Court unanimous ruling. That was a big moment. The audience he has tonight could be one of the biggest of the election. There could not be presidential debates. The convention you've got tonight, these are big moments. You got to materialize on them.
Absolutely. Let's go to Mar-a-Lago and listen in. I think the president is about to begin speaking.
Thank you very much. They call it Super Tuesday for a reason. This is a big one. And they tell me, the pundits and otherwise, that there's never been one like this. There's never been anything so conclusive. This was an amazing night, an amazing day. It's been an incredible period of time in our country's history. It's been sad in so many ways, but I think it's going to be inspiring because we're going to do something that, frankly, nobody's been able to do for a long time. We've watched our country take a great beating over the last 3 years, and nobody thought a thing like this would be possible. We wouldn't have Russia attacking Ukraine. We wouldn't have Israel being attacked. Iran, as you know, was broke. When I was running things, they were broke. They didn't have money for Hamas. They didn't have money for Hezbollah. We had no inflation. Inflation is destroying the middle class. It's destroying everything. Inflation, if you look back over the history, hundreds of years back, it's called inflation. It's called a country buster. And that's what it's doing to our country. What's happened with inflation has been unbelievable. A lot of people say, a lot of experts have said the stock market's the only thing that's doing well, and that's doing well because our poll numbers are so much higher than Joe Biden's. He's the worst president in the history of our country. There's never been anything like what's happening to our country. Today it was announced that 325,000 people were flown in from parts unknown. Migrants were flown in airplane, not going through borders, not going through that great Texas barrier that I was with the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, the other day, and we were looking at the job they're doing. But in the meantime, they're pouring into California and they're pouring into Arizona because those governors aren't doing anything. They're doing nothing. But today it was just announced before I came out. It was unbelievable. I said, that must be a mistake. They flew 325,000 migrants, flew them in over the borders into our country. So that really tells you where they're coming from. They want open borders. and open borders are going to destroy our country. We need borders and we need free and fair elections, or we don't have a country. This is an incredible group of people. So many celebrities that I'm not going to introduce any because I'm just going to get myself in trouble if I do that, because I'll leave out most of you. But this is a room chock full of incredible, talented people, like some of the guys standing right in front of me, right? Big futures, big, fat, beautiful futures. Oh, I'd love to be your age. I'd pay you a lot of money to be your age. But we have some tremendously talented people in this room, including tremendously talented political people that have helped me right from the beginning. We had the safest border in the history of our country. We built 571 miles of wall. We had Mexico supply us with 28,000 soldiers because we wanted them, that's why. And they said, we won't do that. I said, yes, you will, you will. And in the end, they did. It was an easy negotiation, but we had the safest border, the best numbers we've ever had, and now we have the worst numbers probably in the history of the world. It's sad to see what's happening to our cities. Our cities are being overrun with migrant crime, and that's Biden migrant crime. But it's a new category of crime, and it's violent, where they'll stand in the middle of a street and have fistfights with police officers, and if they did that in their countries from where they came, they'd be killed instantly. They wouldn't do that. So the world is laughing at us. The world is taking advantage of us. 3 years ago, we were at a level, we were energy independent. We were going to be very shortly energy dominant, and today we're getting oil from Venezuela. Can you believe it? And we're doing numbers on that oil. You know what we're doing? We're refining the oil. We have our refinery for that oil. It's really, I call it tar. It's not oil. It's terrible. We have real stuff. But we're refining it in Houston. So for all of the environmentalists, you ought to look at that, because all of that tar is going right up into the atmosphere. You just ought to take a look. It's the only plant that can do it. We have the only plants that can take tar and make it into oil, and that's what it is. It's a shame. But we were energy independent. We were going to be energy dominant. We were going to be supplying oil to Europe, all over the world. And then a tragic thing happened during the election. It was a tragedy, because you wouldn't have, think of it, all of the problems that you have today, I don't think you would have had any of them. You'd only have success. And that's what's ultimately going to unify this country and unify this party. We have a great Republican Party with tremendous talent. And we want to have unity, and we're going to have unity, and it's going to happen very quickly. And I have been saying lately, success will bring unity to our country, and it happened before. We had the best economy our country's ever had, and people were calling me that I would have said will never happen. It'll never happen. They wanted to get together African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, women, men, people with diplomas from the best schools in the world, and people that didn't graduate from high school. Every single group was doing better than ever before, and it was a beautiful thing. Our country was coming together. Our country was coming together. And now we have a very divided country. We have a country that a political person uses weaponization against his political opponent. Never happened here. It happens in other countries, but they're third world countries. And in some ways, we're a third world country. We're a third world country at our borders, and we're a third world country at our elections. And we have to stop that. We need a fair and free press. The press has not been fair, nor has it been free, but maybe someday they will be. They're being beaten up pretty badly. People aren't trusting them. They're not believing them. And really, it's a very important factor. The press used to be the policeman. It used to police our country. Now nobody has confidence in them, and we have to get that confidence back. It's so important for the success of our country. So important. So this has been a day that we've been waiting for. I want to thank my family for being here. It's a great family. I have a great family. They've had it very easy since I decided to run for politics. They say, thanks a lot, Dad, we appreciate it. But they're strong and they're very capable people, and they love the country. They really do love the country, and we appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody at my staff. Susie, Chris, incredible job. Incredible job you're doing. I read an article yesterday where it said this is one of the finest run campaigns that anybody has ever seen. That's pretty good, right? That's pretty good. It's really a statement. And we have no choice, because November 5th, it's right around the corner, November 5th is going to go down as the single most important day in the history of our country. We're going to take it and we're going to make it like it should be, respected. Right now, we're not respected. Right now, our country is known as a joke. It's a joke. Other leaders who I speak to, other leaders can't believe what happened to us, because 3 years ago, we were the most respected country anywhere in the world by far. We were doing things that nobody could believe. China was paying us billions and billions of dollars. In 25 years, they paid us nothing, zero, not 10 cents. I was getting billions of dollars, and they were happy about it, as happy as you can be. Of course, maybe there's reasons for things having happened, but they were not so happy with certain things, I guess, based on things that took place. But we were getting along with everybody. We were getting along, and we were respected by everybody. We had no wars. Remember when I had the debate with Hillary Clinton? She said, look at him, look at that personality. He's going to cause wars. I said, no, my personality is going to keep us out of wars, and that's what happened. For 20 years, they were fighting ISIS. I defeated ISIS in 4 weeks. I got rid of ISIS 100%. 100% of the ISIS caliphate. And we had no wars, and we stopped wars. We weren't getting along with a lot of countries. All of a sudden, North Korea, which is a serious nuclear power, but North Korea came along. Kim Jong-un, we got along very well. We got along very well with China until COVID. That was a little bit too much, as far as I was concerned. That was too much. Couldn't take that one. But we made a trade deal with China that I don't even talk about. $50 billion a year in product they bought from our farmers, our manufacturers. They used to buy 10. I got 50, and it was great. But COVID, I don't even talk about that, because COVID was such a horrible thing. It started in the Wuhan labs, just as I said. It was the Wuhan labs. And it came out, I believe, through incompetence. I believe it was incompetence. Some people think it wasn't, but I believe it was. But regardless, it caused $60 trillion worth of damage and death all over the world, all over the world. And we did a fantastic job on that. We never got credit for that. Unbelievable job on that. We came up with things that nobody thought was possible. Don't forget, when it came in, nobody had an idea what it was. They didn't even use the word pandemic. Nobody had an idea. But we did a fantastic job. And we got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for our foreign policy. I think credit like nobody, very few people have gotten. And the press was very honest about it. They gave us very high marks on foreign policy, the Abraham Accords, so many different things we did. But we never got the kind of due that we should have for the COVID, or as I call it affectionately, the Chinese virus, the China virus, which is a much more accurate term. And despite that, the stock market, when we turned it over, the stock market was higher than it was prior to COVID coming in. It was an amazing thing. We did an amazing job, and we have so many people that worked on that, so many of the doctors, so many of the scientists that worked with us on that. It was really, really something. But there's never been an administration that had more success in so many different elements. We got the largest tax cuts in history. We have the largest regulation cuts in history. We rebuilt our military. And what happened, we rebuilt our entire military, and beautiful. We had jet fighters that were 53 years old, and we had all brand new jet fighters. And then after this other group of people that didn't know what they were doing, they took over, and we had that horrible surrender in Afghanistan. I call it a surrender. We took the soldiers out first. You know, I dealt with the leaders of the Taliban in Afghanistan. They were the ones that were causing the trouble. The press was very angry because they said, "Why are you calling them?" I said, "Because that's where the problem is." I say oftentimes, they asked Jesse James, "Jesse, why do you rob banks?" He said, "Because that's where the money is." And I said, that's where the problem is with the Taliban. And I spoke to Abdul. He's still the leader. Believe it or not, he's really the leader of Afghanistan, but he's the leader of the Taliban, a rough group. I say, don't ever shoot our soldiers again. Don't ever do it. Very interesting. What happened is that, we were having, during the Obama administration, previously, they were shooting a lot of our soldiers, and I let them know. I said, don't ever let that happen. I said in a rather nasty fashion. We don't have to go into it tonight. For 18 months, we lost nobody in Afghanistan, and then we had that horrible withdrawal where we lost 13 soldiers, 38 horribly wounded, left Americans behind. You know, you have Americans right now still behind. Call them hostages if you like. It was a terrible moment. We left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful equipment behind, jets and tanks and everything you couldn't think of, goggles, night goggles. They didn't used to fight. They're good fighters. They didn't used to fight at night, but now they do because they have goggles. They have better goggles than we have. So I just want to tell you that led to a lot of bad things, and now the worst things are happening. The things that are happening now are unthinkable, and they're unthinkable at the border. We have millions of people invading our country. This is an invasion. This is the worst invasion probably. We've never had anything like it. No country has ever had anything like it. The number today could be 15 million people, and they're coming from rough places and dangerous places. And we had that shut down. We had everything going so beautifully. When Joe Biden goes to the beach, because somebody on his staff thinks he looks very good in a bathing suit, until he can't get his feet out of the sand or lift the chair, which weighs about 9 ounces. Joe Biden, if he would have just left everything alone, he could have gone to the beach. He would have had a tremendous success at the border and elsewhere. So we're going to take back our country. We're going to make sure we are going to do it right. We're going to have the greatest economy ever in the history of our country. We're going to top what we did. We're going to become an energy center of the world. We were ready to become energy dominant, and they stopped that. They stopped that. But we're going to become energy dominant. We're going to pay off debt. We're going to do things that nobody thought was possible. You know, we hadn't done our second phase of the tax cuts. When we did the tax cuts, the Democrats fought us very hard. And now they say, well, I guess that was pretty good because we took in much more revenues after we cut taxes, and then we did all of those regulation cuts, and people were working, and everybody was happy, and we were all proud of our country. But we're going to win this election because we have no choice. If we lose the election, we're not going to have a country left. And we're going to do something. Thank you very much. We love you too. And we love our country. And we can't let this magnificent, some people call it an experiment. I don't call it an experiment. I just say this is a magnificent place, a magnificent country. And it's so sad to see how far it's come and gone. When you look at the depths of where it's gone, we can't let that happen. We're going to straighten it out. We're going to close our borders. We're going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to get the inflation down. And we are going to make our country greater than ever before. And we're going to do it quickly. We're going to do it quickly. It's going to go fast. We have to get the criminals out. We have many, many criminals that have entered our country. We have people coming in from such bad places, and we're going to have to get them out. We have murderers that are being deposited into our country. We have drug dealers at the biggest and highest levels that are coming into our country. We have people coming into our country that just shouldn't be here, but many, and I say many, large percentages, they come in through the caravans, they come in many different ways. Now we find out again, they come in through airplanes, we send them in. This is crazy. But they come into our country, we're going to stop them. We're going to close our borders. We're going to have to deport a lot of people, a lot of bad people, because our countries can't live like this. Our cities are choking to death. Our states are dying. And frankly, our country is dying. And we're going to make America great again, greater than ever before. Thank you very much. It's been a big night. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Former President Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago, a softly delivered speech, but he hit the main themes that he's hit on the campaign trail, saying it's a big night for him. As of right now, he's won 11 states so far, waiting on a few more, including Vermont. That's pretty tight at this hour. California, the big delegate hall, closes at 11 p.m. Eastern time. He hit all the main points about drilling, about energy, spent a lot of time on foreign policy, specifically Afghanistan, saying that that was a big, big problem and that the country essentially is falling apart. And he sees it as his duty to try to bring the country back from this precipice that he believes President Biden and his administration have taken us to.
Familiar themes, though. I mean, all things that we have heard before from President Trump, not an overarching message that some people may have anticipated tonight. So let's bring the panel back in and see what they thought of the president's speech. Trey Gowdy, Laura Ingraham, Britt Hume, Dana Perino, Harold Ford Jr., and Sandra Smith. Laura, let me start with you. Was this the message that meets the moment here tonight?
Well, I think the moment is the result of tonight, which is overwhelmingly for Trump. I mean, I'm always wanting something that I don't hear from all these candidates. I want it all to be about tomorrow. You have to talk a little bit about your record, but now pretty much everyone knows about Trump's record. So I would have liked him to say more about we're doing this. And he did some of that toward the end. And I think you could heard the applause lines were more about what he's going to do in the future versus the past. But all in all, this is an overwhelming rebuke of the old establishment. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but there's no other conclusion other than maybe Vermont. But right now, I think it's Nikki Haley's opportunity to reach toward the party that is moving and has moved, I would say, in a much more populist direction. Trump could have kind of reached out to her tonight, but I think at this point, it's probably, if she wants to be in the party, it's her time to reach out to him.
Britt, it's interesting that the former president does this a lot. He does not use teleprompter sometimes. He just goes out and speaks off the cuff. Right. Something that we don't see from President Biden. He is very scripted on a teleprompter.
Good for him. Good thing, too.
But at this moment, do you think, to Laura's point, that you wanted to hear something different at this moment, or was this the perfect message for this, in his style?
Big night, big winner. Obviously, he's going to get the nomination. Everybody probably knew that going into tonight. So what was the opportunity afforded by tonight? It was to make people who might be not prepared to vote for him decide, I can vote for this guy. He's okay. He's a better guy than a lot of people think. And what he did was mostly brag about his record, which, he has a case. But I would raise the question, did he add anybody to his column tonight by that talk that wasn't there before? That's the question.
Dana?
Well, in one way, he wins not just the vote, he wins the night for communications. He's the only one speaking tonight, right? So President Biden decided not to take an opportunity to speak. We would have taken that speech.
Absolutely.
Nikki Haley decided not to speak tonight, and there might be other reasons, right? I don't know when she will speak. Well, I'm sure we'll hear from her in the next couple of days, maybe 3 or 4 days, as she soaks it all in and decides what she's going to do. But so there's that. So he wins the night for that. I didn't feel like there was like this great soundbite we're going to use for tonight. I said on the 5 something that I think is something he could have done tonight, which is to look into the camera and say, Mr. President, I'll see you on the debate stage. Would love to meet with you. Do it any way you want. I'll meet you anywhere you want to do it. We can have a moderator or not. We can give you 15 minutes. You know what? We could do a whole debate just on the economy. We'll focus it and just say, I'm ready to meet you, because the American people deserve to know what we will do for them in the future, and to put it on them, because then the story in the paper is Donald Trump challenges Biden to debates, and that becomes a question. Then you put the ball back in their court.
100%. Harold, what do you think the president would say to that? He didn't come out tonight. He had a big win. Could have had a moment. He put out a statement, which we all got. If Donald Trump returns to the White House, all the progress is at risk. He's driven by grievance and grift, focused on his own revenge and retribution, and it goes on. But it's a paper statement, essentially.
So I'm glad Dana sits 2 seats from me on the 5 and is not advising President Trump. It could be worse for President Biden. The stakes are incredibly high now. We've all said this is the longest general election race we're going to see ever. At least I'm 53 years old, never seen anything quite like it. And you wonder, I think, to the point that Laura and Britt are making, what do you do when you get a victory? How do you take the victory and translate into showing the American people that you want to stabilize and secure the country? You think about the great breaches in our country today, our border, our education system, our foreign policy. It was interesting. No mention. He mentioned Afghanistan, but no mention of Israel, Hamas. It's been since October 7th. Still no funding for Ukraine, no funding for our friends in Israel, and obviously nothing on the border. He mentioned the border, but these breaches are real, and perhaps we'll get to a point where we start talking about these things. But I thought he might have missed a moment tonight. To your point, Brett, the Haley supporters, I think she probably needs to reach out. But if you're the one that wins, you reach out. The independents, if indeed black voters and Hispanic voters are flocking to him like some of the polling data, and I don't disbelieve it, suggests, I'd have reached out to people with a little more. I might have gotten a teleprompter. And might have gotten Dana to write a speech for me. I think it might have gone over a little better.
She should. I mean,
I don't. He could have.
You don't think she should call him and say, "Congratulations, sir," and then they try to move on from there?
Yeah, but if I'm trying to heal the breach in my party, and there's a breach, we need to be clear. 30% of Republicans still say that they wanted someone else. I'd reach out. What does he lose not reaching out to her? I don't disagree either, but I just come from a house. I'd have reached out to her.
Listen, Sandra, this is the soft sell Donald Trump. I think, he has done different types of speeches. New Hampshire was much different than this. But to your point, it could have been on teleprompter. Tonight, he is on the cusp of being only the 5th American politician in modern party era to receive a major party nomination 3 or more times. Franklin Roosevelt, Richard Nixon, William Jennings Bryan, and Grover Cleveland. I mean, history is in the making here. And so does, to Harold's point, it meet the moment and his pitch?
It's a good question, because he's got to tell voters how he's going to correct a lot of the problems that they're feeling right now. Earlier, we talked about the tale of 2 economies. And to Britt's point, I mean, he certainly has a record to run on. When you look at the Trump economy, there's a lot to boast about there. But right now, you've got Americans saddled in debt. I mean, 47% higher debt than just 3 years ago. They're racking up credit card debt to pay for what is still sky-high inflation. There was certainly an opportunity for him to really detail how he's going to correct some of those problems. It leaves a window. The New York Times recently published a report basically saying Trump policies will lead to higher inflation. He's got to get out there and really detail to the voters that he's trying to woo now to come over and vote for him, that he can correct a lot of those problems. Because you look at the polling out there, it's Democrats, too, who are feeling this. They are not optimistic about the future when it comes to the economy. They believe it's in bad condition. He needs to reach out to some of those independents who feel the same. And, perhaps there was a missed opportunity, but he does have a record to run on when it comes to the economy, for sure.
Trey?
I think the issues are there